Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. Alright, another entry for you here, this one based on your suggestion. This one has been suggested in the past. I never really got around to it to look at the information as to what it pertains to, but once I saw a look at it, I was like, wow, this is pretty much everything in the kitchen sink all mixed into one when it comes to this particular spirit. I mean, it is so varied. There's so many things going on with it, and I don't know exactly how true a lot of this is, but I'm going to present everything that I can as far as the information here and leave it up for yourselves to resolve what it is. But it is still a very well-known spirit there in Japan, and once I show examples of how powerful this image is and how it's been incorporated into other more mainstream ideas, you'll see exactly what I'm referring to. And what I'm talking about is the spirit in Japan known as the Kitsune, which you'll see a picture of here. Obviously the biggest thing that stands out is that it looks like a fox, like an actual fox. The only difference is that it has several more tails, obviously, than anything else that a normal fox would have. And when I was saying that it's a whole bunch of things thrown together, here's what I mean. Basically, it's a spirit of some sort that lives in Japan, but it's a shapeshifter. But for whatever reason, its most prominent shape seems to be as a fox. And it's a fox that tends to have anywhere from 1, 2, to 3, up to 9 tails altogether. And when it reaches its ninth tail, then that's when a whole other thing happens, and the fox can apparently start turning truly into a shape-shifting spirit, where it can turn into humans, it can turn into other animals. That's just barely covering it of what it can do. I'll explain some stuff here in a minute. There are two variations of the Kitsune. Like, there's the good, and I say that word loosely, Kitsune, and then there's the bad Kitsune. And the word good is said loosely because really it's very, very rare that these Kitsunes are good to people. On the most positive side, they're mischievous. They like playing pranks. They like doing tricks with people. For example, the good Kitsune is known as the Mayobu, or celestial fox. And what they do is they like to play pranks on people, kind of like as a way to humble brag them. And what I mean is this: they love to come across people that are very boastful about their lives. Like, say there's one example that I read was back during the samurai days, there were samurais who loved saying, about their egos, about how popular they were, about being able to show off their essentially their power, their popularity. And so these kitsunes would then come in and try to find ways to bring that person down to a more calmer level. Maybe they would get this person lost, and the person would have to shamelessly, try to find its way back to its home. Or they would play pranks, like they would try to scare the ever-living daylights out of these people, and then have these people, all of a sudden go from being proud and boastful and brave to suddenly cowering later on because of the attacks that the Kitsune would do. Some of these attacks, I mean, they ranged from usual poltergeist activities to other more harmful items. So those are the good ones, you could call them. Now, on an even rarer side, there are some Kitsunes that are really, really good to people. It's much rarer, but that does happen. Apparently, if you meet a Kitsune, and I'll talk about that here in a minute too, and you know exactly what they are, if you respect them and you treat them with the utmost dignity, then the Kitsune will in turn make sure that they treat you with respect. And what they do is they usually offer things to you on a daily, weekly, whatever type basis. That can include money. Like, they'll find money from other places. How they find it, I don't know. Maybe they steal it outright, and then they place it in your possession. Or they'll find other goods and services, like other products that are out there in Japan, and then bring it to your home. Also, if for whatever reason you're able to gain a promise from a Kitsune, maybe you helped save its life, or maybe you were able to do something to keep it from being harmed, and it promises you to do something very good for you, then it'll fulfill its promise. It'll work tirelessly to do so. up until it's done. Now for the bad kitsunes, they're called the nojitsune, or the wild foxes, and these can be outright malicious, maybe even worse than that. And what they do is they like to prey on the good people. So previously I was saying that the other kitsunes like to prey on the people that are ego-driven, that are jerks, that are really boastful and love to everyone know. These other kitsunes, the more bad ones, they like to prey on good people. Like they come across monks and they try to, try to break them, try to make them break and do sins, in other words. Or they come across people that are just hardworking people that are just trying to live their lives in an honest way, and for whatever reason these kitsunes will just simply make their lives miserable. They can even take possession of people, although their main thing when it comes to possession seems to be women. They only love to take the bodies of women, and they get into the bodies of the women either apparently under their nails or straight through their chest. And then once they gain possession, then that's when they take over the life of the person and basically create a living hell of sorts. Now, as far as the actual physical characteristics of the kitsune, again, their most common appearance seems to be like a fox. And so whenever you see a fox in Japan, there's generally a mistrust about them. There's this thing with these foxes where if you see them out in the wild, people seem to hold a respectful distance to them, especially if it's perceived that they have additional tails. Because if you're looking at a regular fox with just one tail, there could be a chance, of course, that that is most likely just a regular fox. But if you're seeing multiple tails, then these kitsunes might altogether, you might be looking at a race of them, and that's when you stay your clear distance. The number of tails increase on the higher number of age that the kitsunes have, and apparently the higher wisdom that they obtain. So the longer the life of the kitsune, the more tails that it has, and maybe that of course comes with more wisdom. And then finally, when it reaches the magical number 9 on its tails, its color changes. It becomes either silver or white or gold. It gains other powers, and then finally it has the ability to shapeshift, which is its ultimate goal. I really couldn't understand ultimately what these kitsunes are for, other than just mischievous at the best. At its best condition is basically just a mischievous spirit that's around humans just to simply cause them pranks or trick them left and right. But somehow, some way, its ultimate goal is also to become a human, and which is strange. If it loves playing tricks to everyone, why it wants to take then the appearance of a human and live the life of a human is strange, but this is how it does it. Once it's able to truly shapeshift into a human, then it tries to find a marriage, like a partner of some sort. And the way it's referenced, these kitsunes, once they find someone, like let's say as a lover or someone as a mate, and they get married and then they have kids, then this person, this kitsune, lives the normal life of a person. They work, they stay at home, they do everything else that you would expect from, let's say, a housemate. But with regards to kitsune, it is so hard for it to try to keep its physical appearance in human form that there are multiple tales apparently of it either accidentally or purposely reverting back to its shape. The kitsune, apparently, the way it holds its shape-shifting form as a human, it's a struggle of some sort. It cannot keep it 100% as is, and every now and then it'll slip. And that's when people report with these spirits seeing the tail either on its back end, or they see a regular person, a regular woman, but its shadow looks like a fox, or they see it outright have fox-like faces, where for a brief moment the face will kind of form more elongated and resemble anything involving like the fox that it's supposed to portray. And so those are those instances where these things, for whatever reason, they're trying to be human, but it kind of slips altogether. In fact, there's one story where there was a kitsune that turned into a lovely young woman. She found a man. The man eventually married her, and then they had a kid. But what had happened was they also either adopted a dog, or the dog somehow came into their possession. But the dog had a puppy. I don't know what happened to that dog afterward, but there was no mention of it. This puppy ended up growing up with the family, and the more it grew up, the more it had a distrust of the wife, in this case the Kitsune. So much so that it began growling, and it began just acting in a very dangerous manner to the Kitsune, to the wife. And the wife tried so hard to get the husband to kick the dog out, but the husband had a good attraction to the dog itself as well. It just wanted to keep it around as a family member at that point. Until finally one day the dog did a vicious attack on the woman, and at that moment the Kitsune could no longer hold and concentrate her shape-shifting with the attack happening at the same time. So part of her reverted into the fox. The husband at that point realized this, and the surprise was over, and so at that point the Kitsune completely reverted into a fox and then jumped away. And even then, this young husband, called out to her and said, "I may know you're a Kitsune now, but you're always welcome at my home." And apparently she would come back in human form at night and then leave the next morning as a person. I'm sorry, yeah, come back in human form at night, but then leave the next day as a fox. By the way, that's another way to try to recognize a Kitsune. If you're a dog owner there in Japan and you're just walking your dog around and you're coming up to a person, and this person, you don't know them, they're a stranger to you completely, instead of the dog acting all happy and wanting to jump about and try to have this person either scratch them or lick them and so forth, this dog, if it recognizes a Kitsune, will start to growl. It'll start growling, it'll start barking, it'll have that dangerous effect that it does not want to be around this person. And when that happens, again, and you're in Japan and you have a dog and it starts doing this around a stranger, there's a good chance apparently that you're looking at a Kitsune. So pretty freaky stuff. Other stuff associated with the Kitsune, more of the magical parts. And besides possession, apparently their mouth can also emanate fire. Their tails can generate fire and lightning. They have the ability to fly. They can turn invisible. They can create illusions. Anything involving, part of their mischievous parts, when they create illusions, they can do so, and they are so real that it's almost indistinguishable from reality itself, as far as being able to misinterpret like what's real and what's not. They can also drive people crazy, with their manifestations, which makes sense again with regards to the Kitsune and its mischievous portions. They can shapeshift into trees. They can grow incredibly tall. Just crazy stuff. Again, I mentioned at the very beginning, there's so much stuff that these Kitsunes have to them that almost nothing has been left uncovered as to what they cannot do. Everything has been thrown to them. As far as their diagnosis, I was mentioning earlier that yes, people to this day apparently can be diagnosed as having a Kitsune among them, and when that happens, there's bad news for the person, because if you're living in a Japanese village and you have a family, and let's say somebody within that family is portrayed to be somebody possessed by a Kitsune, that is not a good thing. That families either tend to ostracize that person, or conversely, the community itself tends to ostracize that family. And when that happens, it's just pretty much it's game over. Like, nobody wants to hang out with that family or that person. Nobody wants anything to do with them. They try to, in some cases, beat them or burn them red, because the idea is if you're doing this to the Kitsune, eventually it'll leave that person and then that person will be saved. Of course, what happens inadvertently is you're also beating up and burning the very same person too. You're not really doing much to the actual Kitsune if it leaves, because all it is it's really affecting the person itself. And that's even if there was anything involving in actual possession of some sort. If it was just another form of, let's say, mental disease or some other diagnostic, then you then the problem was clearly never being solved. The only thing that was being done was this person was being hit, being burned, so there was a very bad thing that was happening to them. Kitsunes also seems to be more of like a moralistic animal. Whenever they take on, for example, the appearance of a young, beautiful woman, part of their mischievous deal is to try to get men there in Japan who try to stray away from their family, get them shamed. And so what happens is, let's say the husband is away, either on family or business trip, and they find a young, beautiful woman somewhere out in the evening. The young, beautiful woman will seduce the man, get them someplace, but then the man, either he'll be knocked out or he'll be teleported somewhere, but whatever occurs, he is wakes up found to be disoriented. He cannot remember how he got there. He's completely in shambles, filthy, and now he has to find a way to try to find his home all the way from where he woke up. And when this happens, then it reveals to his family essentially what he was doing the night before, and then that's almost like a wake-up call, like a literal wake-up call for him to be able to I guess no longer stray from his family ways. But yeah, as far as these Kitsunes, again, so much stuff, so much information. I haven't even talked about some of the other variations of them. Apparently there's like 13 other Kitsunes of some sort. How, I don't know, but they seem to represent either elements themselves, like the earth, like the wind, the fire, the water. But I think there's also Kitsunes involving stuff like as far as seasons, in some cases the calendars. I mean, it's a lot of things, a whole bunch of stuff that is still involved with the Kitsunes. So they still remain a pretty popular belief there in Japan. In fact, even the diagnosis of being possessed by Kitsune is, up until the 20th century, was still a valid explanation. Like, people truly believed up until that point that there was something involving a Kitsune having to do with like a real medical diagnosis. As far as their cultural impact, I was mentioning that earlier. Whenever you think about it, yeah, they do have an appearance in other cultural products. So, for example, here, recognize this guy? This guy, Miles Tails Prower, from the Sonic game series. You'll notice that he has multiple tails. It seems to be like a nod and a wink to the idea of a Kitsune. And hearing about this now, it makes me realize, wow, you know, all those times that I was playing Sonic, the games back on the Sega Genesis days, here was a prime example of a character essentially being as a wink to the idea of the legend of the Kitsune, the spirit of it. And then there's this other guy here from the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Here's a creature called a Keaton, and you'll notice right away, absolutely, it's a fox. It has multiple tails as well. So yet again, another example of a popular figure from a very popular game having the same characteristics of a Kitsune. So pretty interesting stuff. Even when you think about words, it got me thinking, because with these Kitsunes and their ability to essentially either shapeshift or take on the form or take possession of beautiful women, anyone ever hear of the concept of the word a foxy lady? It may be that that's where that's from, because the idea now, somebody very, very attractive, especially somebody that's, let's say, very sultry, almost a seductive beautiness to her, people would call her, oh, she's a foxy lady. Again, it makes you immediately realize, oh my goodness, they might be referring inadvertently, somehow, some way, the word foxy lady was an origination from Kitsune, because of their ability, again, to either shapeshift into beautiful women or to possess beautiful women altogether. So a whole bunch of fascinating stuff when it comes to these Kitsunes. So if anyone has any other info, anything else they can provide, please let me know. It'd be great to hear. There's gotta be tales, encounters of people with these Kitsunes. Again, they for whatever reason, they'll live among people, and they'll want to marry, and they'll want to become spouses. And then, of course, with regards to their encounters with dogs and them sometimes even on their own not being able to concentrate enough to recognize or stay as kitsunes, then there's bound to be people that have had stories of them encountering anything along those lines. So, if anyone has those encounters, any experiences, please post them below. It'd be very, very fascinating to hear. But yeah, otherwise, a good suggestion. Again, one that has been done for a couple of times now, so I was glad to talk about it here. So, alright, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.